Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Late Night Brew, where we talk brews first and get around to the business second. I'm Robert Buktenica, otherwise known as Buck, and tonight with me on the show is Jody Elkins. In a previous episode, I spoke with Mike Gray on the technical side of user experience as a service. In that episode, from it, I realized there's a whole other side to this conversation that really should be talked about. And Jody has some fantastic insight behind that and the truth behind the monitoring services. But first, before we get to that, Jody, what are you drinking?
Cheers, Buck. Those of you that know me well, this will not surprise you. It's a Coors Light, primarily because it's 109 degrees at the moment.
Gotta love that Phoenix weather for
Cheers.
Cheers. For the non-Americans, that's well above 40, or about 40 and or above. Tonight, I am drinking an Abita strawberry lager.
I've had that. That's amazing.
It is phenomenal. I typically steer clear of fruit beers because they taste like jam that has been liquefied, and it's disgustingly sweet, but this nails that beautiful middle ground.
Yeah. There's an awesome orange beer from a local brewery down by you in Phoenix. I'll have to think of the name of that. I cannot think of it.
Yeah, Blossom.
That's it. Yeah,
Yep.
Orange Blossom, Papago.
Yep,
That's
yep.
an amazing fruit beer too.
They are. It's a little heavy on the vanilla side for me, but I can always at least have a pint.
Yeah.
So, Jody, what is your background that gives you, the insight behind monitoring service, user experience as a service, those type of?
Yeah. For what it's worth, and sometimes it's a plug nickel, right? But I've been around the industry for a number of years, 25 plus years at this point. The first 10 years or so of my career, I was very technical. The better part of 20 years of my career, I was on the client side of the business. So what that means is I worked in user organizations in roles as, way back in the day, engineer. And then as time went on, the last 10 years or so on that side of the business, I was in senior management roles. So roles like VP of IT, Chief Information Officer, those types of things. So that was on the client side. After about 18, 19 years on that side of the business, I made the switch to the dark side, to the partner community. And so I ran a partner in Southern California. And then ultimately a few years back, launched Insentra in the US. So as that relates to monitoring solutions, what's interesting is on the client side, I bought and used and implemented and struggled with a lot of monitoring solutions. On the partner side, I sold a lot of monitoring solutions. And so I saw it from both angles. And what I saw consistently is really what I mean when I talk about sort of the truth about monitoring solutions. There is a consistent theme that rolls through that. For every user out there, with really only sort of one exception, and that's in the enterprise space.
Yeah.
In the enterprise space, this doesn't typically apply because the enterprise space has the resources, skills, and people to be able to do what ultimately you need to do. And we can chat a little bit more about what I mean by that.
It's that economy of size. They have the budget, the resource, the manpower to say, you can monitor this. This is your job.
Yeah, they have teams of people, right, that can separate teams of people, for instance, that all that team does is monitoring or data analysis for different aspects of the business. And so there's the resources, skills, but people resources available to say, yes, this group of people or small number of people, or even one person, your entire job is to learn this tool, know this tool, know everything about the tool, and learn or have people in your team that know every aspect of your infrastructure, so that networking, servers, so that when you need that expertise, you can go and find that.
Right, exactly. So, I mean, whether it's small business in a monitoring service solution or a large enterprise, that has these resources, the ability to dedicate. What's the challenge that they are trying to solve with that monitoring service, with user experience as a service? What's that challenge they're trying to tackle?
Yeah, a great question. So we sell user experience as a service. I talk about that all the time, and where we typically are successful selling that is to organizations that have been through the pain that I'm about to describe. And that is most small, medium to mid-sized organizations, and even lower enterprise. So, pretty safe bet any organization sub 4,000 users is going to be familiar with what I'm describing. So look, and I think to understand that, I think you got to go back to sort of the beginning and put ourselves in the chair of an IT administrator, a network engineer, a server administrator, a sysadmin, an IT director, whoever happens to be responsible ultimately for performance of the environment, right?
And I know that well.
Right, and I've been in that role. It was a long time ago, but I've been in that role myself. So you're constantly fighting battles, right? In those size organizations, it is primarily a reactive job. Your best days are days, they're few and far between, and they are days where you're able to focus on something more strategic, something new, something that is going to have a really positive impact to the business, to your IT organization, to your user base, whatever the case may be. But something proactive, something's not on fire, you're actually able to learn something, apply something, and improve something in the organization, right?
Usually holidays.
Right. Usually, my experience back in the day, it was either holidays, parts of the weekend, and certainly typically between the hours of about 10 p.m. and 3 a.m. So looking at, knowing that situation and dealing with that every day, you're in this reactive mode. And so what is natural and what makes perfect sense and what monitoring solution marketing keys in on is, man, if I just had more information, right? If I just sort of knew what was going on, I could react faster, right? I could solve these problems. But what happens is, if a user calls us, if they call us, and then that gets escalated properly, maybe from the help desk, and it gets to me, now I've got a user or set of users that, or in the worst case scenario, the entire organization that is not able to do their job.
Yeah.
And that is obviously a high pressure situation. It is 100% reactive. And I need something to be able to help guide me to solve that problem. It's a very natural, it's the right thought process. It's a very natural thought process. How do I get that information? And so naturally, you look at monitoring solutions, and there's a plethora of solutions out there, from very low end, including free. For an IT admin that doesn't have anything, a free tool is like a godsend, right? But there's all the way from free to very high-end, expensive solutions. And so the natural progression is that IT administrator goes through the process, looks at the tool, learns a bit about the tool, gets demos, gets pricing, tries to sell that up, and ultimately maybe they're successful in that, and they now buy a solution. So now this IT admin, this IT director, whoever it is now sort of on the hook, right? They've now invested in a tool to help them do their job better, and it's a great investment, right? Everyone's excited about it, including the IT admin, and then they go to work the next day, just like they do every day, and they're in reactive mode for all kinds of things, not necessarily a technical issue. They maybe spend a day and a half learning the tool, and they'll configure alerts. And they'll say, I need to know when a server's down. And so they'll configure server down alerts, and they'll configure some basic alerts, and maybe even go based on some best practices. And then they go about their job, or their 10 or 15 other jobs. And it may be days, weeks, sometimes even months before they actually get back to really working in the tool. And that means a couple of things typically. One, you can't walk away from any tool for 2 months and expect to be very comfortable and fluent in the tool out of the gate, right? The other thing it means is that During that time, those alerts typically have become unuseful. You've probably heard the term alert fatigue, right?
Yep. That alert noise, that's whatever, it's there.
That's right. If you're getting 100 alerts a day, and that's a low number for a lot of people, if you're getting 100 alerts a day and 85 of them or 90 of them or maybe even 70 of them are irrelevant, not correct, not impactful, how much attention are you going to pay to how do you know? So ultimately that becomes alert fatigue. You don't get that information. It's not being used properly. In the event in the first scenario, now you have a problem. Let's say there's an outage that gets the help desk escalates to you, you've got an outage, and everyone knows, oh, we've got a tool. So the IT admin now spends, in a pressure situation, the first 5 to 15 minutes just trying to figure out how to navigate the tool because they're not in it every day.
Yeah.
They get there quickly. To 10 to 15 minutes is a relatively quick amount of time. It's a freaking lifetime when you've got an organization that can't actually function. It is a lifetime with lots of heavy breathers, breathing down your neck, a lot of pressure.
Yeah.
And that's still a positive thing. Don't get me wrong. It's still a positive thing because you have more information than you did 2 weeks ago before you bought the tool, right? But the reality is that happens over and over. And ultimately that tool primarily becomes a reactive firefighting tool. Right. You're not in it every day. You're not gathering data every day. You're not doing all the things that need to be done in order to make it proactive. And that's because it is time consuming. It requires a broad set of skills. So it requires an IT generalist, someone that understands servers, somebody that understands desktops, somebody that understands networking, wide area networking, local area networking, somebody that understands routers, switches, there's a broad amount of information. As an IT generalist, typically have pretty good success with these types of tools. And so you find yourself in this situation where you're not in it every day, and therefore it's a reactive tool. Great. Solves a problem that everybody sort of saw. But here's the business challenge. Nobody invests in solving a problem to create more problems. The business challenge is not actually that you don't have visibility into what's happening. The business challenge is that you don't have a way to monitor productivity. You don't have a way to measure productivity, and you sure as hell don't have a way to predict lack of productivity or predict events in your environment that then create lack of productivity. Does that make sense?
Yeah. And I mean, no one wants to be the bearer of bad news of, hey, this tool just uncovered $50,000 worth of shit we need to fix. I mean, that's rough. That no one wants to be in that position.
Yeah, exactly. So at the end of the day, the monitoring tool becomes a reactive tool. And so when you go to that individual the next year, and of course there are exceptions, I'm making general statements here, but it is the vast majority of organizations. When you go to those individuals the next year, the renewal comes up for the tool, and you ask that individual, is this a useful tool? The answer to that is yes. If you peel that onion back and you collaboratively and transparently analyze what it is that tool is giving you, it becomes very clear very quickly that it's not actually delivering the value for which you purchased it, right? The value for which you purchased it is to ultimately reduce downtime, which has a direct correlation to improved productivity.
Right.
That's the business challenge. And so when you peel that onion back, and even that doesn't happen very often because it requires an IT admin or sys engineer, server engineer, it requires that individual to say openly, yeah, I know I recommended this, but man, I'm so busy I can't get to it. That is not something those people tend to like to admit, number one. So you got to get them to admit that. And then their boss has to be open enough and honest enough and bold enough, quite frankly, sometimes to acknowledge that as well to their superiors and say, yeah, we kind of made a mistake, an honest one, but we didn't actually solve the problem. And that's where user experience as a service comes in. The problem with those tools is that every one of them provides an absolute mountain of data.
Yep.
The trick is not collecting data. There are hundreds, literally hundreds of tools to collect data. That's easy. And that's ultimately what those companies have just sold you. They've just sold you a way to collect data. That's great. Don't get me wrong. It's great. But you then have to do the heavy lifting. You've got to analyze that data. More importantly, you've got to correlate that data.
Yep.
Because at the end of the day, the data is meaningless unless you can turn it into meaningful information. And that is, what does this actually mean? What is the root cause of something?
Right.
What do I have to do to fix what's wrong? What do I have to do to prevent this from going wrong again? That's where the heavy lifting is. That is time consuming. It requires a tremendous amount of skill and resources. And that is why it only exists in the enterprise space. That is why small to medium-sized business and even smaller enterprise, they just don't have the level of maturity. And it's not even maturity sometimes, it's budget. They just don't have budget to be able to pour into that. And so that was really sort of the inspiration for Insentra's user experience as a service. Let's take the tool out of the equation. The tool is irrelevant. Let's combine a tool and that heavy lifting service and ultimately provide information and even action if they want us to. But really, UXaaS is about providing the information that's meaningful. Does that all make sense?
Oh yeah. No, that's fantastic. I mean, it's you definitely nailed it on the head. I mean, I can tell you from experience, report fatigue. What do we do with all of this? How do we handle this? What are we supposed to do with it? As an email admin, you get into the DMARC world of how are people potentially trying to spoof us, and you get those reports, and there's a lot of information that comes at you when you set up DMARC. And there's the same reason that we're talking now about user experience as a service, that companies will go, have your DMARC report sent to us, we'll correlate it, and we'll give you the facts.
Right.
What you need to know, what you care about.
That's exactly right.
X, Y, and Z. This is what you need.
That's exactly right. And so that's really, when I talk to customers about UXaaS, user experience as a service, that's really the secret sauce, right? And what's interesting about that is just about every customer in the sales process that we talk to, just about every one of them, one of their key questions is, okay, I understand that we're not actually buying a tool, we're sort of leasing the tool, it's included in your service. What if I want access to that tool? The answer is really interesting, right? Number one, it's simple. You have complete access to it. We don't hold anything back. You can access that tool the same way that we can anytime. So it's like you own the tool. That's number one. And just about every customer at that point in the process wants to do that. And what we find continuously, almost without fail, is no customers actually end up doing that because they don't care. It's a waste of their time to go in and learn a tool. What they need is, to your point, what do I do? And so we provide real-time alerts that are meaningful. We filter out all of the alerts that don't mean anything. We look at those, we translate those, and we send the alerts that are actually meaningful. This is an alert. You get an alert from us in the UXaaS service. You know you pay attention to it because every time you get an alert, something is wrong or something is about to be wrong.
Right.
That's
exactly.
the proactiveness of it, right? So customers pay attention to it. So you eliminate alert fatigue, number one. Number two, on a monthly basis, we'll provide a report that can be quite involved. But one of my contributions to UXaaS was, being a previous client executive, I wanted to have access for my technical team. When I put my CIO hat on, I wanted my technical team to have access to all of that data and all the analysis and all the information if they wanted to. I wanted them to have access to it for multiple reasons. But really, the value in the service is, what do I have to do? If I have an infrastructure, an application delivery mechanism, my environment, if it's not performing well, number one, I need to know specifically in a particular pecking order what I need to do to improve that. And what I mean by pecking order is in order of priority. what's going to be the biggest bang for my buck in time in improving that performance, right? If I've got 5 things I need to do, I don't want to, my first action shouldn't be the one that's only going to have 5% impact on the performance. My first action should be the one that has the biggest impact on the performance, right? So we're incrementally, as rapidly as possible, increasing the performance of that environment. So that's one of the things that we do. There's an executive summary that says, here's a high level of what we're seeing. And here are the items in order of priority that you need to do in order to improve that performance. In an environment that is performing well, we identify the same things, but with a different vein. It's more proactive. We have seen, so as a, for instance, we have seen in the last 30 days, your desktop logon time at day 1 was 13.5 seconds. That may, for that organization, be an acceptable range. But on day 30, that was 14.8. And there was an incremental increase during that time. So we're going to point that out, and we're going to identify the root cause of that, and we're going to say, here's what you need to do to fix it. That's the proactive, and that's the really power of a monitoring solution done right, and that's really why we create a user experience as a service.
Definitely. Well, we've done a fantastic job of covering it, and have unfortunately eaten up our time. So Jody, thank you very much for sharing a brew with me and talking the other side of user experience as a service. So have a great night. Check out my other episode with Mr. Mike Gray talking about the technical side of that if you're interested in it. But until then, take care and feel free to reach out. Cheers,
brother.